Hello, everybody. Today I wanted to look at an analysis of the price of healthy versus unhealthy foods. I think a lot of people have this conception or this idea that healthy foods are a lot more expensive than unhealthy foods, pound for pound. And a lot of people I hear say that they can't afford to go and buy healthy foods, and so they have to go and stick with unhealthy foods while they're in school, or even my parents, other people's parents, other people in general. I think it's just a very common thought that unhealthy foods are very expensive and sometimes unaffordable compared to unhealthy foods. So I wanted to test this and see whether or not healthy foods were truly more expensive than unhealthy foods. So what are we going to be looking for specifically inside of these stores? Well, of course, first, I want to see whether or not it's cheaper to buy unhealthy or healthy foods. That's the point of the nutritional label index compared to the price that they have. But another thing that I really wanted to look at was what stores do to get you to spend more money while you're there. And is this different in certain stores over others? There's a large fuck. Well, what else makes a food healthy? Good healthy foods often come with a lot of good vitamin content. They come from verified sources, meaning that you know who's selling them, so that they're not giving you something that you're not asking for. They may come with a lot of accommodated and unwanted ingredients and other unhealthy benefit or side effects. You generally want to avoid big brand names because they often care more about making money, which they'll often abuse your addiction to taste. And knowing the ingredients is probably the most important other factor other than macro and micro ingredients. And this is because you can know what the food is actually made out of. And some things that you want to avoid are labels with natural and artificial flavors and labels with a ton of different flavors where they have a lot of things that you do not know and are unable to understand the actual true side effects behind. So how am I going to go about this? Well, I was going to go to my local Walmart, my local Kroger, and I wanted to test various foods, some being unhealthy and some being healthy, and use their nutritional index, which I'll talk about later, and compare it to their price per calorie. And I wanted to do this to show a correlation between the price and the healthiness and how much food that you're actually getting. Are healthy foods more expensive to buy per calorie, or are unhealthy foods more expensive to buy per calorie? I don't know. We'll see. So what are we going to be looking for specifically? Well, of course, I want to see whether or not it's cheaper to buy unhealthy or healthy foods while we're in the stores, but I also really wanted to look at what the stores do to actually get you to spend more money while you're there. Is this different at certain stores over others? Is the price of healthy foods higher at different stores over others? That will be analyzed as well. And without further ado, let's hop into Walmart. So I first started off by looking at the rice because I heard that rice is a very big source of calories. I mean, a lot of people all around the world eat rice, and it comes in really large quantities, and it is actually generally like very healthy, and also has a good price per calorie. Like you get a lot of food for what you're getting. Another thing that I think a lot of people drink is like 2% low-fat milk. You can notice that a lot of these kind of foods, like the whole foods and like the cheeses, the dairies, the things that I think a lot of people buy on average, are kind of placed either at head level or at some sort of easily reachable area. If you remember at the beginning, there was the rice that I was trying to grab was a really big bag on the bottom, and there's probably many people that would have a difficult time trying to grab that. Something that I want to note about this Walmart store is that at the very front of the building, this is where all the produce kind of was in this giant rectangle shape of the produce and all the aisles of the food. I believe that, and this is also kind of shown, that the placement of the produce being in front kind of helps the food look more appealing. People might go and stop there to buy food first, and then after they buy healthy foods, they'll go and buy unhealthy foods like this pepperoni pizza. That definitely is not the best thing that you probably eat. There's a lot of cheese and a lot of other things. And a fun fact about cheese is that it's the most commonly ate form of fat in the United States. I found it very ironic that the vegan section was right next to all of the different meats, and I don't know, I found that kind of funny. Another thing I kind of wanted to talk about was some other stores and what is kind of shown in other places. A lot of stores have very specific layouts where they direct the flow of traffic to go around certain areas to lead you from buying certain things to end up having to make you go all the way to the end to buy another thing that you need. And while you're there, you'll have to buy all the things in between that you might see or might want. They usually do this with produce in the beginning and then having milk and dairy all the way at the back at the end. Another thing that they do is they place certain products in certain places, like I said, at certain heights for kids, just to make things more buyable because some things look more appealing to certain people. Another thing that they also abuse a lot are sales and discounts and loyalty programs. They will generally use these quite often. I mean, you see like every single tag looks like they're on sale when you're at a store, just to get you to try to buy what they're trying to sell, of course. There's limited time offers, which are very similar. There's in-store displays and signage saying certain things are like healthier than they actually are, and it looks to be more appealing than it actually is. Same thing happens with a ton of different types of package labeling where certain things look healthier just because of the colors that they have, which is a lot different than, some other unhealthier things. And they have specific marketing teams to try to make these labels look different and look healthier for you. And that about wraps up our journey into Walmart. I think we looked at a good amount of unhealthy and healthy foods that we can analyze later. So, what did we find? Well, looking at this graph of calories per dollar versus nutritional index, we can see that there isn't a very strong correlation of a upwards trend or a downwards trend regarding the nutritional value of something compared to the amount of calories that you get for the money that you spend on it. This kind of means that healthy foods and unhealthy foods don't really have a correlation to them. There's not a healthy food or an unhealthy food that is inherently going to be more expensive just because it's healthy or unhealthy. You can kind of see this because there are a ton of different unhealthy foods that have similar calorie to dollar ratios as other healthy foods that are at the same higher nutritional index, while, of course, staying at the same calories per dollar. You can even see that there are some outliers over at the end, which are going to be your things like rice and beans and stuff like that, because they offer a very high amount of calories per dollar that you spend on them, and they're also very healthy. So that can be a very large part of your diet, and a lot of people, I think, struggle to see that. And this means that healthy foods from Walmart are not more expensive per calorie than unhealthy foods, inherently. And I'm going to show you the equation in a second. So how did I determine this level of healthiness? Something that I wanted to do when I started this project is I wanted to try to make a function that would determine how healthy a food is. And I looked at a couple of things, and I gave a couple of weights to certain values like total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, blah blah blah. And I came up with this function that kind of gave how healthy something was. Now I wanted to make sure that I included some certain types of fats, like total fats, which generally comes on every nutrition label. I wanted to give that a positive weight to it, while giving saturated fats a higher negative weight, because often there are certain meats that have high saturated fats, but still they're going to have a lot more total fats. So that would make them positive on the healthiness index, when in reality there's some processed meats that definitely would not be healthy. Sodium is a very, very normal thing to eat. I mean, it's part of so many different foods. You need it in your diet, but I also needed to add a negative weight to it. But it's such a very small one, even for the fact that it's in milligrams, that it shouldn't affect things that have salt in them that will still be healthy. It's just things that have a ton of salt, like the canned soup, for example, that would actually be affected by that. Carbs kind of go the same way, where you have carbohydrates and added sugars, where the added sugars are worse than the carbohydrates in general because you generally have some natural sugars that you have. Fibers add well to it, and protein adds just a little bit because protein is not all that it's made out to be. But there are a couple flaws with this equation. It doesn't account for vitamins. It doesn't account for monounsaturated and polyunsaturated cholesterol, and a lot of different ingredients. Ingredients are one of the most important things when it comes to food, and you can't really just put that all into one equation because there's so many different types of things, and how they mesh together is also very important. And with the equation out of the way, now we begin with Kroger. Here you can see me and my friend walking into Kroger. My friend actually tagged along, and there's a couple interesting things that he said that I thought might include in the video, but I'll get to that later. I wanted to start by saying that Kroger and Walmart had a lot of similar things. They had a lot of different placements of foods at like lower levels, higher levels, mid levels for you to see, be able to reach and get easily. I thought the store layouts were, however, very different. I noticed that Kroger was a lot more, it felt more intended that you were to walk around the right in a loop. I think this one shares a lot more of the produce comes first, and you have the milk in the back to try to get you to buy as much food and as many different things as possible. Walmart didn't really have this. They just had a square-like structure that was, I'm probably assuming it like that because it was not entirely a food building beforehand. It still has a lot of other things in it, but overall, it's still condensed and it's in the front, and you have to walk down those aisles as well. Here, I'm still going through very similar foods because I wanted to compare whether or not it was different at Kroger or at Walmart. I think I found in the end that Kroger had a little bit more expensive foods than Walmart did, and I think that's just because it is Kroger, and I think Kroger is able to do that because they're Kroger. But yes, I thought this was interesting. The chicken here is actually organic, and I thought I wanted to see how that affected the price. Bananas, matter of fact, are actually a very good source of calories as well as other vitamins and other healthy things. Another thing that companies like Walmart and Kroger do is they take data from things like Facebook and other places to try to put certain things in certain stores to try to sell more things more often. Because certain places eat certain foods more often, and because of this, they're able to put this type of data that you have, like including personal data, then they compound this and they use that to sell certain foods in certain stores. Now, this is like a type of personalized marketing. This also happens just through emails and also through a ton of different things that come personally. There are definitely many times where I've gotten emails from Kroger or from Walmart. Granted, it might be because of me signing up for their rewards program or for other reasons. There are also a lot of things like gift cards, vouchers. They also play a lot of different types of music as well. And here I was looking at the pinto beans because I wanted to try to compare the canned beans versus the bagged beans at Walmart. Something that was funny that happened here was my friend actually was looking through the bread and I picked out honey wheat bread and another type of like whole wheat, whole grain bread to analyze and put onto the chart. And he was kind of confused because he thought that they were both wheat bread, so why not do white bread and a wheat bread? But honey wheat in reality is actually just another type of white bread. I mean, if you look inside, it literally looks like white bread compared to like this whole wheat bread that you see right here. Usually, whole wheat breads usually have other healthier compounds. Like they have more proteins. They usually have healthier fats, and they often have better vitamins. So as we were walking back, I wanted to analyze a couple more things like the spinach and potatoes, and they're just over in the front because these two were also what I had viewed previously, and that kind of concludes our visit to Kroger. So what did we exactly learn from this visit to Kroger compared to the visit to Walmart? Well, looking at the graph, we can see that it is pretty similar to Walmart's graph. There seems to be like a slightly more upwards trend, however, the R square coefficient kind of showing like the correlation is not very strong here as well. However, it still does show that certain foods at a certain nutritional level still don't really cost more than other foods with a lower nutritional level. You can kind of see this because certain dots are directly above other dots, which means that there is generally healthier foods than others. I would say overall the general cutoff for something being healthy on this graph is around 4. Sometimes there are going to be some foods that kind of work their way through the algorithm that are secretly unhealthy just because it's not a perfect thing. Now we combine the two graphs, we can kind of see that they still kind of form the same bulge pattern at the beginning. It means that there isn't really a trend going up or down, showing that there is not really a higher cost for things that are healthier. So what does this mean? I mean, I did just say that things that are healthier don't generally cost more. Well, this is partially true, I believe. I mean, there are things like avocados, which I believe are generally expensive for the amount of calories that they give you. Granted, they are very healthy, so I mean, are you going to be paying for the healthiness or are you going to be paying for just a more expensive food that you shouldn't be buying? That's just kind of a question you have to ask for yourself. Um, this chart obviously is not perfect. There are many flaws with the equation that I came up with, and overall, it was just a sort of very basic model to kind of represent the amount of calories, so more of like the amount of energy you could possibly get to something compared to the amount of bad calories being like bad fats and bad sugars that you would actually receive from it. So it's more of a way of showing that you can get good types of calories for the same amount of money that you spend. And now looking into the social aspect of why this might be. So I think a lot of people think that it's expensive to eat healthy for a couple of reasons. Now, I do, on one hand, think that some people think it's expensive to eat healthy because when they go to the store, they see that a lot of food is expensive, and they don't really think about the money that they're spending on the unhealthy stuff compared to the healthy stuff. Because people don't want to eat healthy stuff sometimes because they're used to eating unhealthy things. So when they go to buy the expensive healthy thing, or actually maybe just moderately priced healthy thing, they think a lot more about the price that they're spending on something that they don't want to eat. And I think that this is actually a big factor. When you go to buy something that you don't, or sorry, that isn't healthy, I think that it is very common for people to kind of brush off the price in comparison. I think a lot of people waste a lot of money on unhealthy food compared to healthy food at sometimes. And a lot of what actually makes a healthy food more cheaper than what I think a lot of people actually realize is that when you buy things that are not prepackaged and they are needed to be cooked, that cooking that you need to do actually makes the price of the thing a lot cheaper. Granted, you have to spend more time figuring out how to cook, how to prepare certain things. It will end up, I believe, in the long run being a lot more beneficial to learn first of all how to cook, but also it's a lot cheaper and it's a good life skill as well. I think that a lot of people also think that it is expensive to eat healthy things because of what big branded companies try to feed to other people information wise. I think that it's beneficial to the companies for them if they were to try to convey a message that certain foods that are healthy are more expensive. And they try to do this through making it seem like their prices are very low all the time on commercials, on television. They do this through a lot of different ways, even in stores. Like they have specific sales that go on. They pay the stores to put in specific areas and other things. While people, they don't really look for the hard to reach places to try to find the cheaper alternatives that may be even healthier than they actually their counterparts do from the big brand companies. So I think these combination of factors actually are what take place in the interactions of people, and I think that this is what allows people to believe this thought of like healthy foods are a lot more expensive than unhealthy foods. And that about wraps up this video. So I wanted to say thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a great holiday season.